And pretty much there. Here we go. Alrighty. So this is going to be the first of the actual serious live streams. So we're going to wait a minute or two, see if anyone has some questions. Otherwise, I'll jump to something I have already planned. So let's see if someone has sent me anything. Not at all. Alrighty. Okay. So let's wait a couple of seconds. Alrighty, if someone shows up, I'll answer their question, but if not, I'm just going to sort of plow ahead. And what I'm going to do here kind of sort of is almost like try and do the basic scripting for a video, which I think I will do it at some point in the near future. So here's the question that triggered it. Here we go. Here's the question. When you were blogging, you did an early post, forgive me if I get the title wrong, on choosing a wife, and then you did a postscript on that on another blog somewhat later. I think many would be interested in how your views on mate choice for both sexes overall have evolved and why over the years. Okay, super good question. I do remember writing that blog post. It was on like top 10 things to choose in a wife or something like that. I believe I wrote that in 2010 or 2011. And I can't really remember what I actually wrote in it. Yeah. Hello, person watching. So if you have a question, more than happy to answer it. Otherwise, I'm just sort of rabbiting on. Okay. So yeah, I can't really remember exactly what it was that I wrote. And I purposely didn't go back and see what I wrote because I knew I was going to think about it. And that was going to sort of change and also what I was actually potentially thinking about now. So in terms of 10 things to look for when you're choosing a partner, I think almost everything with this is going to be coming from the basic philosophy that your relationship shouldn't be crazy difficult. All these things where people would say, your relationship is super hard work and you have to put your nose to the grindstone and you have to absolutely try. I'm not really fully in agreement with. Will there be times where it is difficult and hard? And yes, you do have to put in some effort. Sure, absolutely. But as a general thing, your relationship should be a net energy gain as part of your life rather than some sort of net energy loss where you are endlessly pouring your time and energy into just to sort of tread water and keep things together. So that's really the core of it to me. Your relationship should be some sort of net energy gain. It should make your life easier. I mean, in every other field of human endeavor, two people working together generally have a much happier time and a more productive time and get more things done than two people working separately and apart. So it's basically coming back to this idea of, there should be some form of teamwork. And if you're a team, your relationship should be a lot easier than if you aren't a team. So when I'm talking about 10 things I would look for in terms of choosing a partner, almost everything has something to do with coming back to that primary thought of, is this actually going to make my life, their life easier? Is it going to make a relationship a net energy gain? So I don't actually have a true top 10. I've got about 12 or 13 things I've written out. So I'm not actually sure if I have a set order with this. So if you have things, if you're watching, if you have things that you want to throw out there, more than happy to listen. But here's my number one. This is my number one thing I would look for. that they are someone who is just at a baseline level, someone who's generally positive, someone who's generally happy, someone who's generally agreeable, and it isn't some kind of stunt or chore for them to get into that sort of mindset. Because I find people who are basically negative are always going to find a way to make your relationship a little bit harder. They're always going to be a drain on your energy in some way, shape, or form. And people who are positive tend to be a whole lot easier to live with and get along with. And if you're getting married to someone and the goal is you're going to be together until one of you kicks the bucket, being with someone for the rest of your life who's basically positive just absolutely beats someone who is basically negative. Um, so again, that thought is very closely tied to, are they a net? Is the relationship a net energy gain or a net energy loss? So I think that is absolutely number one. Um, I don't I don't think I would give any thought to being in a relationship with anyone who is just basically negative to some degree all the time, where you can make them happy, they can have a good time, but it's all up to you to manufacture that for them. So they can just become a real anchor, just dragging on you. My number two, my number two is that they should be that the two of you should be relatively similar to each other. Um, and I know this is the whole thing of opposites attract, and this is where all the spark and the energy comes from. Sure, sure. That can certainly play a role. It can certainly be a factor. Um, but over the long haul, someone who is basically similar to you in some way, shape, or form, where you have some sort of shared interest, some sort of things that you enjoy doing together. I think that is something that is going to make things a whole lot easier. If you have relatively similar education levels, relatively similar income levels, you come from similar backgrounds, the more things you have that are points of similarity, the easier it is to be able to get along with each other and have similar expectations for what the relationship is meant to be and what it's like. Um, and I think there's also been a lot of research that backs up that idea of, the more similar you are, the easier it is to get along. Yeah. And some of these things also sort of matter with the extended family too. If you both have a similar religious background, that means when you're getting together with extended families or whatever, you're all getting together for the same sort of religious background things. Yeah. So it's just something that's going to make things simpler, easier, less of an effort, more enjoyable, more relaxing. Because again, like I said, the relationship should be a net energy gain rather than a net energy loss. And if you're having to constantly work with each other or their family or whatever it is, just to keep the wheels on the bus, just to keep everything calm and stable. Like there's all this effort just to stop it from being difficult times with each other or extended family. Um, that's all time and energy where you could be having fun, relaxed, enjoying each other's company, all that sort of thing. The third thing The third thing that I have written down is that they should be into you as just sort of a baseline attraction level. Now, that you should be their type and they should be your type. Um, and sometimes people don't even really fully know exactly what their type is, what they are truly attracted to, what turns them on. But if you can figure out what that is, and it's clear that you are their type and they are your type, that means as the relationship goes on, you don't have to put as much effort into trying to manufacture attraction, trying to manufacture their interest, because you're their type at just some sort of baseline level. They are going to be more interested in you just, straight out of the gate, no matter how the relationship is going, than if you weren't their type. So let me give you a couple examples of that sort of thinking. For me, in terms of movies or whatever, I really like science fiction and fantasy stuff. If I'm told of a new movie that is coming out and it's not science fiction or fantasy, my level of interest is automatically lowered. I might still go see it, but I have to be convinced, and there has to be good advertising. There have to be actors that I like, or whatever it is. The trailers have to show a really good story that I might be into. But it's more work to get me interested to go see that sort of thing. If it's science fiction fantasy, automatically I have just a baseline interest. Yes, I'm interested. Tell me more. And it may take a lot less to get me out of the house to go to the theater to watch the movie, because science fiction and fantasy is my type when it comes to the movies. So it's the same with people too. If you're your partner's type, it means they wake up in the morning and just they have a baseline interest in who you are and what you do. Now, when times are good and you're their type, things are amazing. When times are bad and you're their type, it's what carries it through and stops a bad day being a crisis day. The other thing to look for is that when you're in a relationship with someone that's edging closer to getting married, if you can look at their relationship history and it's all sort of like, bad boy 1, bad boy 2, bad boy 3, bad boy 4, and then you, and you're this nice, sweet guy, this very, very pleasant man. That's the sort of thing where you should be going, bad boy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then me. I don't know if I'm her type, because people's types don't necessarily change all that much. And it would be predictable if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bad boy and then you, that at some point in the future there's some sort of reversion to type when bad boy number 6 or 7 shows up somehow. Then you're working a lot harder to regain attraction and keep their interest and all that sort of stuff. So if you can figure out what each other's type is and you are both into each other, it makes things enormously easier. For me, I'm very fortunate that I am married to a woman who is into smart. Smart men are her type. Smart, pleasant men are her type. I'm basically pleasant. I'm smart. I actually call this the wall of smart. So, and every time I'm shooting videos, every time I'm writing a blog post, every time I'm doing a book or teaching a course or anything like that, and I am demonstrating the value of my intellect, demonstrating the value of what I know and the skills, it's a demonstration of value that is attractive to my wife. But it's not going to work for every woman, because I'm not every woman's type, if you could believe it. So being each other's type makes things so much easier over the long run. And again, it goes all the way back to that point of the relationship should be a net energy gain rather than a net energy loss, or require constant effort just to maintain, just to tread water. The fourth thing is that they, and obviously you too, should have some sort of basic good health and healthy habits. Life is a long time, and you can be getting together in your early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, and you can have some incredibly unhealthy habits. And there's not necessarily any consequence for them then. So if you're getting together with someone and you're in basic good health and you're taking care of yourself, and you're with someone who's smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, gets blackout drunk once or twice a week or whatever it is, eats terrible, doesn't exercise, you know, has medication they should be taking, but just doesn't. Just a whole health of this looks bad. In their 20s, they might be able to get away with that. But over time, they're going to age really poorly. They're going to feel increasingly sick. They're going to increasingly lose their energy levels. They're going to increasingly be less fun to be with. They're going to be less likely to respond to you with them being attracted or them being horny about you or anything like that. And by the time you're hitting your late 30s, early 40s, and certainly by the time you're hitting your 50s, they might be really sick. And you really might have signed up for the until death do you part thing. So they can lose decades of their life. Even if they're not dead, they can lose useful decades where they had high energy and wanted to do things, as opposed to they're just sick and can't do much at all. So I think you have to look at, does your potential partner have good, healthy habits? Are they in basic good health? Are they doing, some sort of basics for taking care of themselves? And just speaking for my thing, I had no real clue I was going to end up having a heart attack. I can look and see things I weren't doing quite right over the few years leading up to it, but it's a bit of a bolt out of the blue in some ways. Of course, though, once I had it, my mother did chime in that basically almost everyone on her side of the family had some kind of heart disease. I didn't actually really know this, in part because I didn't really meet many of them, because they died before I was born or when I was very, very little. I don't really remember who. Both her parents were dead before I was born. So the family history thing is an issue too. Number 5, that they and you should be within each other's price range. What do I mean by that? If you can think of the brutally honest 1 to 10 scale of levels of attraction, or the 1 to 10 scale of hotness, if you're a 7 and you get into a relationship with someone who's a 9, that means that relationship is always going to be incredibly hard work for you, because you're always going to be having to make up the difference to compensate for the fact that you're a 7 and they're a 9. They're always going to be looking down at you in some ways as you scurry and try and do awesome things to gain their interest and attraction, and you're going to have to work very, very hard at this relationship. Because at any point, someone else can come along into the picture, and if they're a 9 and your partner's a 9, it just sort of fits together as a logical set. There's going to be potentially a lot of interest and attraction. And then what do you do to trump a 9 when you're a 7? And I'll come back a little later on the list that thought of, like, why does a 9 even be with a 7? But overall, if you're a 7, I think you should be with someone that's a 7. If you're a 4, be with someone that's a 4. If you're a 6, be with someone that's a 6. If you're a 10, be with a 10. There's a degree of similarity there. You're within each other's sort of normal range of attractiveness and what you can pull. And it's sort of like, it's not so much settling as in then I'm deciding to take something that's crappy, but it's a reasonable price point. And anytime I see a relationship where 2 people have quite wildly different levels of attractiveness, the more stress and strain on that relationship there is, the wider that attraction difference is. And often you can see relationships like if you see 2 people who are both very, very obese, like just and I'm not slamming on fat people, but just clinically very, very heavy, and that's reduced their overall attractiveness. If you see one of those people getting a bee in their bonnet and they're suddenly hitting the gym and they're eating right and they're doing all the right things and raising their levels of attractiveness consistently month after month, over a year or two, you know that relationship goes into a lot of stress. Hello, person watching. If you have a question, more than happy to answer it. Otherwise, I'm just talking about a sort of a top 10 list of things I would look for in terms of getting married to someone, or what my basic advice is for what to look for in a partner. And I scared them off. All right. So yeah, within your price range, the more the difference in attraction is, the greater the stress on the relationship. Now, okay. And also it means you don't have to do any great stunts, great over the top stunts to get them into the relationship and actually make them want to be married. Because if you have to do some big kind of over the top stunt to even get the relationship started, and that was what was required to make it work, well, that means you're going to have to keep doing that sort of thing for the entirety of the relationship. And that's going to be a lot of effort. It's going to be an awful lot of work. So, it's going to, and it just comes back to that original point where I think that being married should be a net energy gain rather than a persistent over the top effort just to tread water and break even in terms of the energy. Marriages and relationships should not be huge amounts of work. It should make your life easier because you're together as a team in some way. So the really, really big one, I guess we've been building to this one, the number 6 point. The shorthand version is don't marry crazy. Because crazy is always an awful lot of work to handle. The slightly more the slightly more sort of involved way of looking at it is, rather than just saying don't marry crazy, is you have to be very, very cautious about being with someone that has a fairly significant trauma history. And whether that's happened to them as a kid, as a young adult, over the course of a prior relationship, whatever it is, if they're carrying some real scars and wounds from completely legitimate, horrible situations and things that happened to them, if that is not really handled well, if it's not resolved well, if they are not truly recovered from it, that means all that trauma is now in your partner. And they're going to have terrible, terrible abilities with being fully intimate. There's an awful lot of times I see where people have gotten into a relationship that's had some form of, real negative sexual events happening in their life, and then they're unresolved, and then that just directly impacts the relationship. Now, so that's something I think you have to be cautious of. If there is some sort of clear and obvious way that they have worked on that, recovered from it, improved themselves, where you can see a clear progression of improvement and they are obviously better, that's quite different to a whole bunch of crap happened to me in my life and I never did anything about it. And now I'm shackled to you and it's your job to take care of me. So be very cautious about marrying people and getting involved with people who have traumatic histories. The other thing I would look for, now, we're at I guess my point 7 kind of feeds into that one. So let's jump on to what my 8 was. Let's call my number 7. Okay. The other thing I would be concerned about is missing explanations. Missing explanations. That's when they have big, unclear gaps in their relationship history when you're talking with them. Where it's totally unclear what they were doing or who they were with or what was going on. It's just a sort of a big empty gap. Now, no different than if someone was applying for a job and you looked at their resume and it was, great place, great place, great place that I worked at. This was awesome. And then what happened between 2012 and 2015? There's just nothing there. Like, what was that? Um, those sorts of gaps of explanations of things that happen, and especially with no clear story or understanding or explanation of why truly significant relationships ended. Um, that I think is something you have to look for. Hello, person watching. More than happy to answer questions. Otherwise, I'm just pretty much talking about a top 10 list of things to look for in a prospective spouse. So if you have a quick, and they run away. Let me write that down. Okay. Talking about top 10 list for things to. It's shaking because my laptop is up on a box because it gives a much better angle. It may look for in a prospective spouse. So that was number 8. No missing explanations. Big unexplained gaps in the relationship history. That would be something I would be very curious about, especially with major relationships ending and there's no clear explanation given, if it's just some sort of evasiveness or waffle or something like that. Um, that should lead you to wonder about what actually went down, what actually happened, and why that was so. Because the answers to the explanation might be things that you really need to know and should know and would want to know before you got involved with that person. Because it's actually very, very common with significant relationships ending that the reasons the first relationship ended are the same reasons the second relationship ended. And if you're the third relationship, the reason from 1 and 2 is probably going to be happening in your. Um, so that'd be something I'd be really curious about. Alrighty. And what are we? Let's do that one. Let's do number 9 here. So the other thing I'd be really curious, this is especially if you're younger versus older, the question of how many children are involved. Um, for most people can only afford 2, maybe 3 children. So if you get into a marriage, get into a significant relationship with someone, and they already have prior children before you, so they have 1 or 2 kids from a previous relationship, previous marriage, if they can only afford, and between the two of you can only afford 2 children, and they've already had 2, that would mean you're probably not going to have one yourself, Or if you do, it's an awful lot of work, awful lot of effort, and it's all a bit of a strain. Um, and just as sort of an ironic point, this was actually something that was drummed into me by my mother. Yeah, most people can only afford two children, so if you're with someone who has, a child, that's one less of yours. Um, so it's just something to really think about. Um, and obviously, if it's a very different situation if you're, looking at remarriage or whatever in your late 30s and 40s. By that point, most people have had some amount of children, and the whole blended family is quite different then. Now, but if you're in your early 20s and you're looking for that one and done relationship, then if they have prior children, it's actually going to be a lot of effort to make it all work for you. Again, it all goes back to that thought of relationships really shouldn't be hard work. They should be some sort of net energy gain and not making your life constantly harder. What have we got here? So the next one, what are we up to? So that was 7. That was 8. Number 9 is obvious. No cheating history. I really wouldn't want to be in a relationship with anyone who has a relationship history where they have cheated on someone. Um, it's it it's not necessarily destiny, but it is sort of an influence on expectations. If you can be given a choice, all things being equal, being with someone that has cheated on someone before or hasn't, the person that hasn't, um, the person that hasn't is obviously the better choice. Number 10, I would be really cautious about getting involved with anyone who is for some reason unwilling to have some sort of persistent period of being truly intimate and engaged with you. Yeah, and I don't mean engaged in the sense of being engaged as in a fiance. I mean being engaged as in connected and doing things and actually having a form of connection. Because if they can't do that before the wedding, if they can't actually be connected for a persistent amount of time, then there is no assurance at all that they're going to do that on the other side of the wedding. Um, as classic examples of this sort of stuff, people who have been in long distance relationships, where they're apart for a fairly long time, but they get together for one weekend a month. Um, and when they get together, it's awesome, and it's all sad when they go back to their place and or to do whatever it is that they do. Um, and the hope is that when we get married and actually get together, it's going to be significantly better because we're together all the time. But that long distance relationship might have been masking their basic inability to form a true adult, connected, emotionally involved relationship. Like they can do it one weekend a month. Like they have enough energy to do it one weekend a month, but they can't necessarily do it every day on a really consistent, persistent basis. They only have so much ability to do this. So at that point, the long distance thing can act as a smokescreen covering up their inability to actually connect. Now, yeah, and if there's always a reason they can't really be warm, open, and connected, if there's always a reason they can't quite be open and share, if there's always something that's walled off inside of them, getting married does not change that instantly. If anything, getting married just sort of locks it all in place, and then you're married to someone that has terrible intimacy problems. And I've seen this for both men and women. And then you have to go through this. And usually, what happens is that you work extremely hard trying to get them to open up, trying to get them warm and fuzzy and connected. And it is a huge uphill battle because once you're married, you're connect. You're shackled to them in some, to some degree. Now, far easier to approach this sort of stuff before you actually get married. So going back, so I guess we've done 10 points. Um, Going back to some of the earlier points as a sort of example. When I talked about, where was it? Back in point number 5, marrying within your price range, marrying someone who's basically similar as you. So if you're a 7, you're marrying a 7. If you're a 9, you're marrying a 9. I've seen it happen a number of times now where someone has orbited a member of the opposite sex potentially for years, and they've orbited and they've been their best friend, and they've just spun around them, waiting for that moment of weakness, waiting for that moment where they let the guard down and they actually truly need someone. And finally that happens. So the 7 that's been orbiting the 9 for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever it is, the 9 finally has their moment of weakness, their trouble in their life where things are all blowing up and going to crap for them, and they agree to the relationship, and they agree to get married, and they move in together, do all the things, and they have their sort of wake up moment where they decide, okay, I've got to settle and get my life started. That's great for that moment, but at some point they will get past that and they will tune back into a 9 and you're still a 7, which means you're going to go back to orbiting, because orbiting is the baseline of the relationship you've had. So you have a great first year or two of marriage or whatever, but then after that, it's just this endless uphill battle, this endless grind, trying to get some sort of attraction and connection from them while they are disinterested, don't actually want you all that much. It's not some sort of crazy aberration. It's actually very, very predictable, because if it's gone 8 years of you orbiting, and then there's one freakish year where they're into you and the relationship really starts and then they get married or pregnant or whatever it is, and that's a year, maybe 2 years, and then it's 8 to 12 more years of you orbiting. In that sort of 20-year span, only 1 or 2 years were they into you, the rest of it's just orbiting. So this is again why it's important not to endlessly chase someone that just basically isn't into you. Because potentially one of the worst things in the world for your life is you get into a relationship with someone who just basically isn't into you. I totally understand how it can be attractive and addictive, and this is the thing that you want. This is the person you want, and feels like it makes perfectly logical sense to chase and pursue. But then when you catch them, you if that's just a freak, if that's just a freak occurrence when you catching them, how do you sustain the relationship? It's very, very difficult to do it. And you're going to have to go full on 24/7, bring in your absolute A game day after day, week after week, month after month. And anytime you have any kind of weakness or anytime you have any kind of stumble, um, your ability to pull the attention just slides away. And this all goes back to the thing that I said at the very beginning here, that your relationship, your marriage should not be some kind of god awful chore that just is never ending, just trying to keep it to baseline, just trying to keep treading water and have things set at 0. Your relationship should be a net energy gain for your life. It should make it easier. Your relationship should be solving problems in your life, not creating problems in your life. And just coming back to the thing of, being careful not to be involved with people who are just totally crazy, huge trauma histories, and have had no attempts to improve them or resolve them. It shouldn't be your job. Like, the point of the relationship shouldn't be that it's your job to save them. Like, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine to make choices and pick careers and do things where you are doing things to make the world a better place, where you are trying to save people and enrich people in some way, shape, and form. Absolutely do that. And you can expend energy in the world to make the world a better place. And that's totally fine. And it's a good thing. But you're meant to be able to do that out in the world and then come home to a relationship where it's a net energy gain. If you spend all day trying to save the world and do things and run your careers, and then you come home and it's still save the world time, you're going to have a very, very difficult relationship, because not only are you expending energy into this other person, constantly trying to keep them supported, keep them going, keeping their spirits up, making them happy, all this sort of stuff, while you're expending energy like crazy into them, they're not really spending energy into you. And you're not getting your needs met. You're not getting the intimacy you want. You're not getting the sex you want. You're not getting the love you want. You're not getting the respect you want. You're getting nothing that you need from a relationship, when the point of the relationship is it's your job to save them. And it doesn't matter what you're saving them from or what you're trying to save them for or whatever it is. It's just an endless energy expenditure where you're getting very little back, if anything, and you're not getting your needs met on a really consistent, persistent basis. Um, by all means, save the world, but that's meant to stop at the front door. And the relationship you have is meant to be mutually beneficial for both of you. It should make both of your lives happier, both of them better, and should be a net energy gain where this relationship is solving life problems for the two of you. It's not that it's making more problems. Your marriage should be a solution. Your marriage should be a solution, not another problem to add to the fire. Um, so I think that is pretty much what my current top 10 list is. Generally positive, that they should, number one is generally positive, because positive people are way easy to live with than negative people. They should be, number two is they should be reasonably similar to you, because the more similar you are, the easier it is. The whole thing of opposites attract might be true, but it does mean the relationship is harder to manage. Um, even things that don't necessarily look super difficult. Um, I'm from New Zealand. My wife is from America. That difference requires energy to maintain. I mean, I obviously still marry her and all that sort of stuff, because that's the choice I made, and I would again. But the fact that we're from two separate countries, separated by an extremely long plane flight, and we only have her family here and all my family is back in New Zealand, that's harder. That's a harder, more energy demanding situation than if we were both in New Zealand and both from New Zealand, or both in America and both from America. Because now we have, if we were both sort of basically born and raised in the same place, we would have two sets of grandparents we could call upon. Both of us would know what exactly the local culture is and nothing to adapt or change to. And it wouldn't matter whether we were both from America or both from New Zealand. but we have this. There is a cultural divide in some ways. It's not huge, but it still makes, anytime we see my side of the family, it's a lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot of work and a lot of effort. Yeah, it's still worth it, but it's still a lot more effort than getting to see her side of the family. And what I have, number 3, appears to be into you as a baseline attraction. You are their type. Absolutely. If you can figure out what your type is, what you're actually truly attracted to, what type turns you on, um, you should work very hard to be in a relationship with someone who is your type. It just makes it so much easier, and they should be and you should be their type. That just makes things so much easier. Number 4, good health and habits. Now, again, it's if you're healthy and you have basic good habits, you're going to have a whole lot more energy. You're going to be a whole lot more positive, more fun to be with, more things to do. And you're not going to start truly declining, and getting increasingly sick or ill once you start moving into midlife and beyond. Um, Basic good health, basic good habits can be a world of difference between living a long life and certainly a long, functional, happy, good life. Number 5, marry someone with your own price range with no special stunts to get married. Yeah, I think that's really important. Now, if you're a 7, marry a 7. If you're a 9, marry a 9. If you're a 4, marry a 4. Yeah, and it's not settling, it's just reality, and it's relationships where two people are roughly equally attractive tend to last longer and be more stable and be more enjoyable. And the truth is, no matter how hot you are, um, there are people who are not wildly attractive who have wonderful relationships and enjoy them more than the beautiful people of the world necessarily do, because they're happy with their relationship. Number 6, don't marry crazy. Be very cautious about a huge trauma history that has had nothing done to try and rectify it, nothing done to try and change things. Number 7, no missing explanations, no big old gaps in their life history where they have no real explanation of where they were, what they were doing, or what was going on. And certainly be cautious about no explanations for the end of significant relationships. Because whatever that was is something that you probably want to know, because it's probably going to show up in your relationship. Like I say, relationship number 1, no explanation why it ended. Relationship number 2, no explanation why it ended. Relationship number 3, no explanation why it ended. And your relationship number 4. And we can bet the reason why your relationship ends is somewhere in the missing information in 1, 2, and 3. No prior kids. And again, that's one of the obviously a very different thing. If you're in your early 20s and looking to get married, no prior kids is an obviously easy one to gun for. If you're talking about people in their late 30s, 40s, whatever it is, by that point, people do have history. It's more unusual than not that they don't have some kind of kids at that point. Yeah. But the basic rule is most people can only afford 2. And if the person you're getting involved with already has kids, those are kids that you're not necessarily going to have of your own. Yeah. And the other thing I've seen with people getting, I guess this is an aside, the other thing I've seen a couple of times with people getting married to someone who already have children, and they start realizing we just can't afford to have any more. And that realization and awakening of I'm not going to have children because my partner has already had children with their previous partner. And this is not even getting into the whole thing of, you're being taken advantage of by, some solo mother with 3 kids, and you move in and you're just wallet man. Not even getting into anything like that. It's just, if you want children and they already have children, odds are pretty stacked against you in terms of getting to have more children of your own. And when people get into the relationships, it's all good, it's all happy, they're enjoying it, and they really and they really like the kids that their partner already has. They get on well with them. They start happily wearing the stepmom and stepdad hat or whatever it is. They can get on really well, but then they do slowly start realizing, it's like, I'm not going to have ones of my own. Or I might get to have one, but I'm not having two, I'm not having three, because we just can't afford it. And my partner, yes, they're a good dad, or yes, they're a good mom, or whatever it is, but they pay child support, and that's just thousands of dollars a year going out of our house to somebody else's house. And that's the reason I can't have kids of my own. It's a pretty bitter pill. And something that's, people may not fully realize until later on in the picture. And by that point, what do? You're already married. You spent 5, 6, 7 years together. Do you end it? Do you go find someone new? What do you do? No cheating history. Again, I think this goes without saying. What was that point? It was like number 8 or 9 or whatever it was. No cheating history. If they've done it once, no, it's not destiny. They might have learned their lesson and do things differently, but it does preclude them. There is a greater odds that they will do it again at some point in the future. And it also means, put it this way, compared to someone ending a relationship where they're like, I tried to do this, that, and the other. I put my effort in. I tried to fix things this way. I tried to do it that way. We tried to do marriage counseling. I wanted to try this, bum, bum, bum. And in the end, it just all fell apart and I couldn't do anything. Versus, yeah, it was crappy for a while. And I cheated on them in the last year of our marriage, but it was dead by then. Who do you want? If you're picking one of those two people, you want to pick the first one rather than the second one. Because at least the first one, they may not be the greatest person in the world. They may not be the smartest. They may not be the nicest, but they do actually have some sort of baseline integrity and loyalty where they tried to make it all work, as opposed to the second one. I gave up. I threw in the towel, and I got what I wanted, and yes, it all blew up then. And number 10, persistent intimacy before marriage. Like you can actually sustain a relationship with them where they are intimate and engaged and open. I think that's so important, because if they can't do it before the wedding, they are not going to do it after the wedding. Like, there is no wedding cake, is no magical panacea for emotional trauma. It's just not. Can people go through horrible experiences and be damaged and get better from it and improve themselves? Yes, they can. They absolutely can. But that requires some effort, and you need to see some sort of story arc that suggests that that is actually happening and is actually true. It's a completely different situation where you're with someone where they are honest that they struggle sometimes, but that they are also expending effort to come around and reconnect. And if they're not doing well, they are honest about it. Now, that's a much better thing than there's just a wall, and it's your job to bounce off that wall. It's just terrible. And it wasn't necessarily part of the top 10, but it was the observation of if you're an orbiter and you get to marry your dream girl or dream guy, um, it's very, very common that that relationship will revert back to you orbiting them. Um, and it may be incredibly painful for all involved. I've seen it a number of times now where people have I settled for my partner and it seemed good at the time. I thought it was going to work. I was hoping solidifying the marriage was going to make it a whole lot better, but it just didn't. And now I'm with someone I have very little interest in. I do care about them. I do like them. I do love them as a person. I'm just not at all attracted. Um, and when those situations happen, there's always the risk and the thought that at some point someone walks across their field of vision who is their type, who is at their attractiveness price point, who they do have a connection to. And then what do you do? Do you pursue that person or do you stay in a relationship with someone you're just fundamentally not into? Um, so it's a very sad and tragic um, scenario when that happens. I've talked through people that a number of times now, and it's always very, very sad because it's not necessarily that one or the other of them were trying to take advantage of the other or trying to be mean or vicious or unkind. It's just they were settling. They were hoping it was a solution. They wanted it to work, but then they just weren't attracted. So, so yeah, I don't know actually what I said in my original top 10 list. I'm very curious to go back and read exactly what that is and compare and contrast. But I do think the biggest difference between what I said then or even in the updated version, I don't know when I wrote that. Um, at the heart of it all, I'm so much more clear on this now. So much more clear on this. The heart of it all is that your relationship should not be hard. It should not require colossal effort. It should not require blood, toil, sweat, and tears on an enduring daily basis. Your relationship should be something that brings you a net energy gain in your life rather than a net energy loss. Um, and I think that's at the heart of everything. And I've seen that so much more clearly now than I think I could have ever possibly imagined back in like 2010. Um, and I guess sidetracking slightly, I didn't actually start really writing about that concept of energy being important until maybe 2012. And the Mindful Attraction Plan book there is a lot about energy. And that to me was the answering the question of like, why did the primer work really well for some people and not work as well as it could be for some of the other ones? So anyway, we're almost coming up on an hour. I think that is quite enough for day one. Um, as I said in my earlier videos, I had no particular expectation that dozens and dozens of people would come. I had a few people popping in. I had a maximum of 2 viewers simultaneously. But it's been good to talk this through, and I think I'll probably turn this into a true top 10 list video at some point. So, hope you liked the video. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm planning to continue the live streaming Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Central. I really would like this to be more of a question and answer and interaction with people. Have questions, please send it to AskAtholAnything. Ask Athol Anything. Where are we? At gmail.com. And ideally, I will take all those questions and get to answer them as we go through. But um, I had a suspicion that we weren't going to be a whole lot of people to this first one, so I had a planned thing to talk about. So anyway, I've had fun. This has gone well, and I will see you tomorrow. Catch you later. End.